I, what inspired you to venture into the romantic comedy genre with She Come to Me?
My last film, Maggie's Plan. Should I look in the
Yeah, camera, yes,
okay.
please. Thank you.
My last film, Maggie's Plan, played in that genre of romantic comedy, and I was interested in making something a little bit more complicated and more cinematic and bigger and in a way more operatic.
How did you come up with the idea for the film's unique premise involving an opera composer and a tugboat driver?
Well, I had written a short story where the protagonist was a blocked artist, but he was a writer, and I decided that it would be interesting if he could be a composer, because music is such a big part of film, and it's more interesting to watch music happen than watch somebody write, which is very boring. And in my short story, there was a female character. She was not a tugboat operator, but I thought it would be interesting to have her be a tugboat operator, because I've never seen a female tugboat operator on film, except in a movie from the 1930s called Tugboat Annie, which I actually had not seen when I wrote it, but it's even rare in real life. There are some tugboat captains who are female, but not so many.
Your film's ambition tried to succeed to redefine the comedy romantic genre. What were your goals in reshaping the romantic comedy genre?
Can I read that?
Yeah, okay.
It's the third one?
Yeah.
How did you approach maintaining consistent? Oh, yeah. I think that romantic comedy genre has been debased a little bit, made to seem sometimes trivial, and I think that it's really a part of our American culture, actually, and one of the great roots that we have in cinema, our cinema history, and so many wonderful films have been made in that genre, and I was interested in recapturing that original depth.
How did you approach maintaining a consistent tone within juggling humor and social commentary?
Well, tone is, of course, the most important thing in directing, and,
yes.
But I'm very interested in bending tone so that you don't have only funny moments, but you can have very sad moments, and then you can bend the tone so that it becomes funny, and then it can become sad again. And in some ways, my great hero in this is Chekhov, Anton Chekhov, actually, who bends tone all the time. And I do think that that is what life is like. Life is funny, and life is sad, and life is absurd, and that's what I wanted to reflect in the movie.
Peter Dinklage plays the lead character, Steven Lauddem. What drew you to cast him in the role, and how did he contribute to create his character?
I think Peter is one of the finest actors working today. He has immense comedic timing and talent, but he's also very profound and real as an actor. So, and I think that he's very original in the way that he approaches playing characters, and I thought that he also was able to legitimately play a composer. He understands music world very well. His family is part of his family is in the musical world, and I was just so impressed by him, and yeah, it's just one of those things. I'm very drawn to him.
Marisa Tomei's performance as Katrina is praised for its authenticity and charm. Can you share your experience working with her on this character?
My experience
to work with Marisa Tomei is perfect in this movie.
So Marisa is astonishing, I think, in the movie, and I really don't think there's another actress working right now that would be more authentic. She's so warm. She's so sexy, but she's also has so much emotional depth, and she's so funny, and she could play a working person very legitimately and very realistically. She spent a lot of time, actually spent time working on tugs, like living on a tug for a bit. She did a lot of research. She's just one of the great one of the great actresses. I really feel she's a national treasure. So it was a wonderful thing working with her. She's very serious about her work. She's very detail-oriented. She's tremendously generous with herself.
Anne Hathaway played Patricia, a therapist. What aspect of Patricia's character did you find most intriguing, and how did Anne Hathaway bring them into life?
Well, the character of Patricia, which Anne Hathaway plays, is a very difficult character to play because she has to be both funny but also genuinely having a kind of a nervous breakdown. And the two things, it's a very delicate dance, and she's really walking on a tightrope. And I think that it really is an example of the tremendous talent and control that Anne has. That she was able to really accomplish the character, and she worked so hard, and she a lot of the most important work that she does is very interior, so it was about just allowing herself to just feel what's going on inside of her, but she's hilarious and I think very moving.
The subplot involving Patricia's son, Julian, attempts to address complex themes. What was your intention behind including this subplot?
Well, I had always had a story, in a way, the two stories. The story of Steven Lauddem and his block was one story. And then the story of the two teenagers was another story that I always wanted to tell. And the work of creating the film was intertwining those two stories. And in a way, the film is a kind of a layer cake, like a piece of cake. Then there's layers of all the strata of society, in a way. Not all of them, but a few of them. It's talking a bit about class, about race, about expectations of working women, about religion and mysticism. It's sort of. That's what I liked about it, is that people who you don't necessarily think are going to encounter each other. And I guess it's a little bit about America.
Yeah. What do you believe set She Came to Me apart from other romantic comedies in terms of its approach to storytelling?
Well, I am very interested in how structure can be used to braid multiple storylines in such a way that it's not distracting, but it's sort of like breathing in and breathing out. Like you're in one story, you're in another story, and then how people affect each other, because in a way the movie is partly about how we all affect each other, we create each other. All these characters are really creating each other and changing each other's destinies.
The film's cast is quite talented. How did you work with them to bring out the nuances of their characters?
Well, you have to begin with a great cast, and that's the most important thing. And you can certainly work with them and try to adjust their work, but finally you are dependent on their preparation and their decisions about character. So I would say that the casting in some ways is a huge part of it, and I've been working with the same casting director, Cindy Tolan, for 30 years, and it's a very fruitful collaboration.
Could you discuss the significance of the film's title, She Came to Me, and how it relates to the story?
Well, She Came to Me is a line in the movie, and it's both about the fact that Marisa Tomei, as a character, came to Peter Dinklage's character as if like she came to me, like an idea came to me. But it's also about a person coming to another person. And, you could also say that it's about that She Came to Me works for many of the characters in the film, that they are all coming to each other, they're all influencing each other.
The film's music is mentioned in the credit. How did the musical score by Bryce Dessner contribute to the overall atmosphere of the film?
My work with Bryce Dessner was very began very early because he had to actually compose the two operas, the two final scenes of the operas before we started shooting. And so that put a huge creative burden on him, but it also jump-started our creative partnership. I had written the libretto and the lyrics, so we were starting to collaborate very intensely early on, and I think that set the stage for what we did later, which was a very honest and profound kind of like, I don't know, intertwining. Like we worked really, really well together. He's an extraordinary, an amazingly talented person, and I really wanted the musical elements of the film, particularly the operas, to be realistic, that you believe that they could really be, because he's a significant concert composer, and I wanted that kind of music in the film, that you believe that's real.
I am a huge fan of Bruce Springsteen. What can you tell me about your collaboration with him for the song Addicted to Romance? It's a great song.
Oh, Addicted to Romance, yes. Well, what happened was, it was kind of a miracle. Bryce and I were talking about who would be the best person to write the final song for the film. And I said, I really wanted something truly American and timeless. And he says, well, there's one human being who's right for that. It's Bruce Springsteen. And I said, well, yeah, but we're not going to get Bruce to write a new song. I had worked with him a little bit. I knew him a little bit. And he had let me use Dancing in the Dark for Maggie's Plan. So I had a connection, but it wasn't the kind of thing where I could say, oh, Bruce, would you write a new song?
Yeah, of course.
But I reached out to his manager, and he and actually Patty Scialfa suggested that I just send the movie to them. They watch the movie, and who knows what would happen. And they watched it, and they actually called me, and it was one of the great moments of my life. They absolutely loved it, and they and Bruce said, "Let me. What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Well, just if you could write, if it's something comes to you, if she comes to you." And he 3 days later, he had written the song, and he wrote it, sent me a demo. It was incredible. It was like, I think it just really came to him, and it was like the most amazing blessing.
It's a beautiful song. What were some of the challenges that you forced to work during the production of She Came, and how did you overcome them?
Well, one of the most profound challenges was that we were shooting during COVID. Yeah. And so Anne Hathaway, Peter Dinklage, and Joanna Kulig all got COVID at different times. Half of our crew, I think, got COVID. I did not. And my cinematographer did not, thank God. But so it was just enormously inconvenient in terms of having to move locations and schedules all the time. And anybody who knows about independent film, it's like every penny counts. And so when you have to rent a brownstone in Brooklyn for an extra week, that's very expensive. So it was very tough in that way. And I have to say, AI, who's our financiers, were really wonderful and really, really stood behind us and took care of us in terms of the filming. And it was, because a lot of films shut down in the same period in New York. It was a real spike. So that was probably the biggest challenge. The rest of it, everything was a huge challenge. So the learning curve for me was like that, because I've been making films for many years, but this was a huge challenge.
Looking back on the production of this film, what moments of aspect of the project are you most proud of, and what you would do differently if given the chance? Well,
I think I'm really proud that I was able to adapt to working with filming opera, and also, the contrast between working inside tugboats and then making these big opera numbers, and figuring out this aspect ratio change where you have the square ratio for the interior of the tugboat, because it just makes more sense. and then the wider one for the operas and the rest of the film. And then, you know, when you're in a nun cell, you once go back to square. But it's kind of like I had always wanted to do that and to have the freedom to do that, but also I needed a real reason, narratively, and I found one. So I feel proud that I really love the film visually. I feel like I feel very good about the film visually, and I love I do love all the performances, but that's probably like I'm most proud of.
After the private lives of people, you are returning to the Deauville American Film Festival. Could you tell us about your experience at this festival and what it means to be present again this year for this new movie?
Well, I have to say I really love this festival because it feels unique in the location, in it's a much more gentle vibe than almost every other festival that I've been to, and so it's nice. I think, especially when you've done it for a long time, there's something about festivals that can be a little bit overwhelming, and I feel like you have a chance to concentrate, talk to the journalists, walk on the beach.
Nice.
So it's definitely one of my favorites.
And my last question: what advice do you have for a young adult aspiring to become a writer and director? And could you share some details about your current projects?
Well, I think for me, the best advice I ever got was to stick to my own voice, not to change my work because other people thought that I should. That doesn't mean you don't take advice, but that you stick to your instincts, you know, and if even people you really respect tell you that something has to change, if you don't believe it has to change, don't change it, and keep it personal. I think the threat of AI, is really less acute when you're doing really original work, and I think that that's something that's really important. Is that we are human beings and we are individuals, and that we should emphasize that in our writing and in our filmmaking.
Perfect. Can I take some pictures?
Yeah.
Thank you.